level 150 is way too much for the meta level. Why? I think the discussion about 150 being too high for the meta and so on is kind of fucking like oh, howdy. Okay, alright, wait. What the fuck? The topic of level 150 equals, oh, there is no builds anymore. It's fucking weird thing, man. Because it is up to like what you define as a build. Or more like what you define as a standard of a build. What 150 is enabling are essentially hybrid builds. And why hybrid builds wouldn't be the standard? Why the standard would be like a pure one-stat oriented thing? Instead of, let's say, like some sort of the hybrid. Unless the damage output would be, let's say, insanely higher on 150 in comparison to 125, and therefore like the gameplay experience would be affected negatively, then I can understand why 150 is essentially a bad thing. But yeah, but it is not the case. It is not really the case. It's just you have like a way more freedom with these plus 25 additional points, because on the 125 you can already make dedicated one-stat oriented build. On level 150 you can make even more powerful one-stat dedicated build. Like for example, you could make yourself the 80 strength dex build, and on top of that put yourself some additional points into, let's say, intelligence for the sake of, so you can use the powerful straight sword weapon like Karian Knight Swords, yeah? And you do not really have to sacrifice other points for the sake of that, that much, yeah? Or like you can make the 50 endurance, 80 strength build, yeah? Just in case, level 137 for the invasions, or like 139, and like 125 for duels, is something that I personally enjoy. And I do not have problem with these levels being like, you know, the most optimal in the game for the particular type of gameplay, and because of that, like, you know, 125 being essentially a dueling meta. But the argument of, oh, like 150 kills the builds or something like that, like, oh, you do not have build anymore, I think it is little bit of bias towards like a one way, like how you would describe the build. Technically, even if you are playing on the max level, you can still talk about the build in the meaning of what like a loadout you are using, yeah, how you are optimizing the armor sets and so on, yeah. The same thing, like, for example, you have builds in games like Outwards that completely do not have any sort of stats whatsoever that comes from the levels, because there is no levels. Like, the example of the max level in Souls games is kind of poor, because you do not have that much variety of the additional bonuses that comes from the equipment, but you got my point, yeah? You still technically might have some variety in the build making, even if you're running the max level. Even if like all your stats are on the 99, you can still have some sort of the differences between like how the builds are used, yeah? They more like setups though, but setups are parts of the builds. Oh well, you got another friend. Uh-oh. GG's gamer, very fun fight. So yeah, like, I gotta admit that my point with max level in case of the Souls games is rather poor, yeah? I want to bring the example, it is always up, like, what you define as a build, yeah? And just, like, a definition of the build in the Souls games doesn't actually equal definition of the builds, like, in the different games and so on in different communities. Since Elden Ring is so so fucking like it is essentially different audience overall than what we had in the other Souls games. The definition is kind of evolving as well, yeah? And people portray things a little bit differently. You have like essentially different meta on the level 125. You have different meta on level 50. You have different meta on level 100. You have different meta on level 125, and you are going to have different meta on 150. These builds are going to differ. And yeah, like no matter if you're going to continue on, like if people would actually establish as the most popular level would be level 200, then you would start you would see the metas like develop and builds being more advanced and advanced. And yeah, even level 200, like it is still going to be the build. It is going to be more hybrid oriented the higher you are going with the level. So yeah, this is like up to your individual opinion if you consider like a possibility to make easy hybrid builds as actually a build, or maybe like you consider a build only as something that is like a one, maybe like you know, like a one offensive stat mostly oriented. Yeah. Well, this injury. Still at like 260 or 280, you are basically max level. What do you mean by that, Ferb? I'm not sure, guys, if you can like hit level 180, have like all the meaningful soft caps for the sake of to maximize damage, and then like have fucking, for example, like shitons of mind for the comfort of use. I don't think that's the case. I think like this is a little bit of the over-exaggeration. Like the max level PvP is mostly fucking spam fest oriented when it comes to Ashes, yeah? But yeah, like I do agree that the PvP on the max level in this game is kind of fucking dog shit. I'm just saying that like a 150 versus 125 is just not that significant of the difference, in my opinion. Well, all of my 138 builds are hybrids. Yeah, like the additional 13 levels that you get out of going 138 or like 139 or 137 actually allows you for the easier allocation for the hybrid builds. But to be honest, on 137, like if I would want to make actually competitively viable super strong build, I still wouldn't go hybrid. I would go like a one stat dedicated build. Like if I would want to go with like a very, very, very powerful meta-oriented setup that just makes sense statistically. Well, like a closing thought from me when it comes to the topic of level 150 meta and overall like the whole topic of what is built and what is not is, I think it is legitimately up to the fact that you are used to certain definition of what build is in case of the vast majority of the Souls games, and like the definition might change, especially considering the fact that Elden Ring is quite a different audience to the other Souls games overall.